welcome to The Well-Tended Life. I'm your host, Carrie Wilt, a writer, speaker, and heart cultivator who's on a mission to help you grow through any season. Today, I am here with my special guest, Courtney Barton, who has graciously agreed to come and talk to me about joy, goodness, and growth. This series was inspired by the words of my great-great-grandmother in her famous book, The Secret Garden. And in it, she said, Mistress Mary always felt that however many years she lived, she should never forget that first morning when her garden began to grow. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, growth, like there's no growth happening around me. But I promise you, you're wrong. There is joy, there is goodness and growth planted and growing all around you. But sometimes we're moving too fast and we don't take the time to notice it. So my point in this series is to invite some of my friends from all walks of life across the country to come and talk about the joy, goodness, and growth in their lives, so that in hopes maybe when some of the things that they say might stir you to start noticing it in yours as well. So let's dig in. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, I'm so thankful that you said yes. So for my listeners and those watching, give us a little bit about who Courtney Barton is and what's going on in your world.
So I am a mother of 3 teenagers, and that, obviously provides lots of challenges on its own. My husband, Amos, and I have been married for 19 years and have lived in Kerrville for all of those 19. And up until the last couple of years, I was a full-time mom and loved it. I had let me turn that off so that doesn't make noise. There we go. And loved my job. I really didn't want any other job. And I remember when I was a junior in high school, my dad sat me down and said, all right, you're going to go to college and now we need to get a plan for your life. And what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a mom. And he said, yeah, of course you do. That's great. That's really great. But what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I think I just said I want to be a mom. So anyway, I've really, really enjoyed this chapter of having, every chapter, little kids and, big kids. And I think every single stage with my kids has been more fun than the one before it. But my oldest is a junior in high school. My youngest is an 8th grader. And I'm starting to see, they're about to leave. So I started creating a vision for myself beyond motherhood. And a couple years ago, I became certified as a mentor and leadership life coach. And so this is a relatively new professional development for me, but I love it so much. And getting to use a lot of the same skills, being a good listener, being a good question asker, seeing the gold in someone that they might not recognize themselves and helping pull that out. It's been a real joy to get to develop that part of me. That's just being an awesome mom.
Let me ask you this. You said something that I'm like, oh wait, we've got to go back and talk about this. You said, I began to think about a vision for myself beyond motherhood. First of all, what triggered that in you? Was that something that you were starting to feel like maybe, stirring, or was there an incident?
Yeah, frankly, there was. My mom, is and was a fantastic mother growing up. And unfortunately, she really never got a vision for her life beyond motherhood. So when my sisters and I grew up and left home, she, just tried to fill that void by, helping my dad at his business. And that was really great. And it gave her something to do. But because it wasn't her thing or her passion, she just felt, quite frankly, a little bit resentful. And, she never began to enjoy the second chapter of her life the way that she really wanted to. And I just, observing that, I love my mom, but I just wanted the second chapter of my life to be different. I wanted to, not have to mourn the loss of my children growing up and leaving home, and my life exiting when they exited. So seeing that right on the horizon, I started making preparations for that ahead of time. But it's hard. It's hard when you've devoted,
Yes.
18, 20 years of your life to that singular focus, and then fighting all of the self-worth issues like, I don't know how to use a computer. I barely know how to complete a sentence. I'm really good at doing dishes and laundry. What would anybody need from, what value could I provide anyone beyond this? So anyway, but I definitely.
So where did that come from then? Was it journaling? Was it what did that process like? I mean, we do not have time to go into all of it. I'm sure we could talk for hours about this.
Real succinctly, I've always been the person that someone will come to and say, I've never told anybody this, but I just have to get this deep, dark secret off of my chest. And then they would share with me, their life events or circumstances. And I think I've just always been a natural, safe place. So trying to utilize the gifts that were already in me. And I'd been in quite a bit of prayer about it. And finally, I was like, Lord, I just need you to point the direction. And my oldest daughter was at camp, and I was there with her, and she said, Mom, when we get home from camp, all my friends want to come over and have a slumber party, but because they want to spend time with you. And just that week, I had been into life coaching that specifically targeted teens and young adults. And it was like the Lord going, yeah, that's what I need you to do. So I immediately started my certification and finished that up and just jumped right into clients. And I meet with people of all walks of life. It's not just young adults. It's so funny, for a while I was meeting with dads, lots of dads that were my clients. And then occasionally, a young professional and some teenagers, but that's kind of how it landed on me.
I love that. One of the things that I talked with someone in a former interview about was just one of the good things about this time and the quarantine and all of that kind of stuff is that it is creating space for a lot of people to have these conversations about, what is next for me or what really is my true calling. A lot of times we stuff our days with so many things that we can't even hear our inner voice and that thing that's bubbling up inside of us. And, my hope is that people are taking that time to ask those questions of themselves and seek it out. But I love that, having a vision for yourself beyond motherhood, because I think a lot of people get there and they don't have a clue. Mm-hmm. Even probably a vision for their marriage as well outside of parenthood. That's probably a second book in there. So
totally, that's a whole other conversation. Yes, for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, so talk to me about kind of clearly this is kind of a new thing for you, the life coaching piece. So this is a big part of what season you are in, right? You're in the end of the kids growing up season and the beginning of implementing your vision for your life. Is there anything else that kind of is different in your world right now, either with COVID or not, or just kind of what's in your life right now?
Well, frankly, because we homeschool our kids, I had to do the math, but we're in our 6th year of homeschooling our 3 kids. And the joke is that with my kids, that quarantine life versus our normal life is pretty much the same thing. There's not really any difference. Right. But, of course, none of us are ever going to look at a roll of toilet paper the same way. But for the most part, this is not too far off of our normal life. But I'm actually an introvert, and I've kind of enjoyed the quarantine because I have a very legitimate excuse to just stay home and, and introvert my life away. So, thankfully, thanks to Zoom, I'm still able to meet with my clients and keep up those relationships. And interestingly, I've now developed clients out of state. because of COVID. And,
Yes.
we're all going to meet on Zoom anyway. And so my client base has kind of expanded because of it.
That's such a blessing, and there are so many of those hidden little treasures in this whole experience, and people's eyes are just open enough to see it. So let's dig into really the guts of why we're here, which is to talk about joy, goodness, and growth. Talk to me about anything that right now is bringing you just pure, unadulterated joy. What is that for you?
Well, I spent a little time thinking about it, because when your life really is just a lot of the sameness every day, which mine is, you tend to overlook sometimes the joy. But when the quarantine started, and people were starting to post all the funny things, I found the gamut of the people I follow, from I'm going to learn a new language and I'm going to make home-baked goods for my family every single day, to
Right.
the people who were, I'm not finding a lot of incentive to get out of my daytime pajamas and put on nighttime pajamas. And, if those are the spectrums, I definitely fell towards the pajama end of the spectrum. But I also wanted to, get down the road in my life and be able to look back on Corona 2020 and have something to point to, for that extra time that we had on our hands. So I dug up an old project, a writing project that I've had for 3 or 4 years, just sitting there waiting on me. And I knew that the way to hold myself accountable to that was to use, social media to hold me accountable with my friends and the people who follow me. And so I started making these daily little posts of, here's my plan, and here's what I've accomplished, and here's what I've learned. But the joy has been, and now it was a 21-day period of, I'm working towards my goal, and you're welcome to join with me in working towards your goals, and see what we find, see what we learn about ourselves and one another. But the joy came in seeing other people make radical changes to their life because they just joined me on my little goal setting journey. I had one girl that was really dealing with managing stress well. And she decided for the first time in her life to start journaling. And after the 21 days, she said, I had no idea how transformational this journaling would be to my emotions. And this will be something that I do the rest of my life. So when my influence on someone has such a positive effect, that's mountaintop experience for me. For me, life just doesn't get any better than that. So
that's like the whipped cream and the cherry and the nuts sprinkled on top. Yeah.
So anyway,
so
reflecting
awesome.
on the last month or so, I would definitely point to that being even bringing me more joy than whatever I had accomplished on my own project, seeing other people be influenced in that way. So anyway.
Oh, I love that. And I think so many people are afraid to put things out there like you did. You literally, you invited people and said, hey, look, I'm going on this journey. I need some accountability, and I'm going to make you basically force your audience. You're like, you are hired, which I love that. You're like, you are now my accountability partner, whether you want to be it or not, whether you actually watch this video or not, you're my accountability partner. And I love that. But I think sometimes, all it takes is for us to share our truth, for someone else to be like, oh, yeah, okay, I want to do that too. We think it's this big, hard thing. And then the ripple effect that happens it's awesome. It's so awesome.
I've decided that vulnerability begets vulnerability.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think also in the case of what you did, I think it was permission begat permission.
Yeah.
It was like you saying, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing that I've been putting off forever and that's in my heart. Gives other people permission, which I think a lot of people lack. They think it's, especially if it's not, something that's not going to make money, that's going to take them away from other things or whatever happens, we make up all these excuses, and seeing that somebody else is brave enough to stand up and do it makes us think, okay, well, if
maybe
they can, then
too.
maybe I can too. Oh, I love that. Okay, so goodness to me. So you talked about journaling, actually. So this is actually joy, goodness, and growth is a part of my daily journaling practice. So every day I look back and I do what I call reflect, and I reflect back on the day before, and I write down one thing that brings me joy, that brought me joy, one thing, one bit of goodness that I'm grateful for from the day before, and then any growth that I saw the day before in my life. And so, so goodness for me is basically the thing that I'm most grateful for from the day before. And I try to stay away from like the typical, family, house, those kinds of things. But, what are you feeling just really grateful for right now in this season?
I'm exactly like you. I kind of live a lifestyle of gratitude. And when I try to identify specific things that I'm grateful for, most of the time those things just sound real trite. Oh, I'm so, like you said, I'm so grateful for my family. And I am, but digging deeper than that. And for the most part, my entire life, the thing that is common in my gratitude is relationships, whether with friends or family or whatever, but for how those people have invested in me or changed my life or whatever the case may be. But, of recent, I have to say that, and it may sound a little strange, but one of the things I'm really grateful for and have learned to be grateful for is me. That there are things that are special about me, that I am unlike anyone else, good and bad, and to decide that I'm grateful for those things and those traits and those values, as opposed to using them to compare myself to the other person who is different. Because it's so easy for me to look at you and go, oh, I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for your influence, and I'm so grateful for your joy. But to turn that inward and to be grateful for me has been kind of a new shift in my gratitude, and one that was long overdue.
Well, you couldn't see it, but a giant light bulb just went off over my head, and I think it might have exploded into rainbows. I've been doing this journaling practice, same thing, for years. And I don't know that I've ever put me as something that I'm grateful for. Even my traits, I do the thing where I'm grateful for challenges. I try to flip those on their heads. So, I'm grateful for even sickness and health and, all of the things, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. But I am going to make sure that sometime soon I really put down in my journal what I'm grateful about me, because you're right. Yeah,
well, and then when love for Courtney and all of her little isms goes up, then I only have more love to give. So, even though it sounds, maybe a little egocentric, it has such a positive benefit on my own life and my own relationships that I highly recommend it.
Well, I'm in. It's on my to-do list. And I love a to-do list. I like to check things off. Are you a to-do list person?
I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Oh, listen, you know what? I would say count your blessings, because I think sometimes it can be a curse. Sometimes I even write things on my to-do list that I just did, just so I can check it off. It's horrible.
The cool thing is, though, that you're productive. Like, you're getting a lot of stuff done because you've got that list to check off. And I'm the one who's like, yeah, I'm going to get around to that. I'm going to do that. And
well, you are getting things done. Listen, girl, you are getting things done. So don't, you may not need a checklist. Not everybody needs a checklist. My mom was a list person. She still to this day, she has sticky notes everywhere of the things that she needs to do. And so I think I just I guess list people begets, list people, right?
Now I can blame my mother. Thank you, because now I can blame her for not being.
Oh yeah. Go right ahead. Throw her under that bus. You're good. But there's growth happening all around you, whether you have a to-do list or not. And so talk to me about where you're seeing signs of growth in your life, or maybe about life lessons that you're learning right now. You pick.
Well, I'm always looking for it. I don't always find it, but I am always looking for it. I've got two younger sisters, and I always credit them with leading me towards growth. So, the joke is, don't you dare grow anywhere and not take me with you.
Oh, and I love that.
The joke is that I talk and they read. So they do all the reading, and then I just get them to impart all the wisdom to me so that I don't have to be bothered with reading the books and, actually learning the information. But recently, my youngest sister has had me reading a particular book that she just said, you have to, you don't have a choice. You just have to read this book. And it has caused me to do some serious growth that just wasn't present before. So the premise.
Okay, do tell. What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is Letting Go, and it's authored by David Hawkins. Okay. But the premise is that we learn to distinguish the difference between our thoughts and our emotions. And most of the time, our emotions create thoughts, and then those thoughts, usually in the case of bad emotions, but those thoughts, we get on a hamster wheel with our thoughts, and our thoughts spin out of control almost to the point where they take on their own life greater than the emotion that may have birthed the first thought to begin with. So, for example, let's say I get into an argument with my husband and I get my feelings hurt. Well, so now I have an emotional state, a negative one, that is causing me to have all these thoughts like, how could he have been so insensitive? And he knew that saying something like that was going to hurt my feelings. And, what I should have said was this, because then he'd have really, heard me or whatever. So the thoughts get out of control. And instead, the author says, rather than letting your emotions create these monster thoughts that tend to then run your life, mm-hmm. just sit with your emotion. Sit in it. Don't allow it to create thoughts. Don't try to suppress it. Do not try to ignore it. Do not try to distract yourself from it. Just sit with your emotion. And in practice, what happens is that as I have been sitting with my emotion, like in the example of, getting into an argument with Amos, I realized that the emotion is not anger, it's rejection.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Sit with that rejection and just allow myself to feel it, then strangely, and I can't really, and I'm sure the author has a better word to describe it, but for me personally, it feels like a release. Like, okay, all right. And what I've realized is I've begun to validate my own emotions. So rather than needing you to validate my emotion, I'm doing it myself. And interestingly, the first few times I started practicing this, I was experiencing physical pain sitting in my emotion. I could literally feel my chest tighten as I just sat in that emotion. But then interestingly, the next time I did it, it didn't last as long. And then the third time I did it, it was just like oh, yeah. Okay, all right, that's what that feels like. So the point of it is that with practice, and especially those emotions, those negative emotions that we feel that are really deep and come from some deep wounds, that in time we're healing those wounds so that, you know, possibly at some point in the future, we don't feel rejection at all from anyone. And all the whole point being to live a more empowered life, a life full of more freedom. And so as much as I hate to admit that my sister and her insistence that I read this, she was so right, but it has been a truly transformational journey of reading this and putting it into practice. And so there's my growth. And the funny thing is, you can grow even during quarantine with these practices because your family doesn't go away. They are still here, driving you crazy and causing you to have negative emotions.
Well, and I love what you said about practice, and because I think so many people, you know, like read a book, let's just say, and there's this idea, and then they do it one time, and then it doesn't feel good, and they walk away. Right. And, you know, matter of fact, it's funny because my husband and I went for a run yesterday. Well, a run walk yesterday. I'm about to start training for a marathon, and I haven't run in a few years, but I've been walking a lot. And so I was like, hey, I walked a little bit. And he was like, how did it go? And I was like, well, basically exactly what you said. Well, the first little burst sucked really bad. And then the next one sucked less. And then the next one was okay. It was all right. And too many of us get stuck in that very first part and don't go back in and try it again and get through to the end, where the true benefits are.
Yes. And honestly, that those first several times of sitting with that emotion was definitely more painful than if I had turned it into thoughts and then let those thoughts turn into words and dealt with it by not really, you know, sitting with it and experiencing the fullness of that emotion. I'd much rather just turn it back on him, or, you know, distract myself away from it, and many times just, well, all things work together for my good, so even this is going to work out for me, and really that's truth. But it didn't help me address my emotion. So I think that now it has the power to be more effective. And anyway, it's definitely a journey and a process that I'm still working through, of course. But anytime I start to see I love microwave growth, you know, I love growth that you barely have to invest in at all, and you just see fruit pop out. And it feels like one of those, you know, that I barely have practiced this and already seeing major change in the way I'm feeling and thinking.
Oh, I love that. There are so many nuggets today that you shared with us. I mean, too many to even number. I'm so excited for people to see this and hear this. Thank you so much, Courtney, for coming today and sharing about your joy, goodness, and growth.
Thank you for having me. It's always so much fun to visit with you. I feel like you and I could, you know, just keep on for several hours without stop.
Oh yeah, and we might after this. We may just not record that whole thing. And thank you to everyone out there too who has tuned in to this episode about joy, goodness, and growth. My hope is that today you will hear or you have seen something that has opened your eyes to the joy, goodness, and growth around you. Because here's the deal, even in the midst of all of the storms, it's there. It's planted around you. You just have to open your eyes and notice it. So until next time, blessings and blooms, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.